Welcome or welcome back to our role-based webinar series, which we began in the fall of 2021. Today, we will focus on the role of school facility managers in school safety efforts, which include safety, security, emergency management, and preparedness activities. As with all of our webinars in this series and beyond, there are a few tips for engaging with the platform and us throughout the event. We place links to relevant online resources in the web links pod. Please explore these pages and feel free to share them with your colleagues. You're also welcome to pose any questions in the Q&A pod or communicate any difficulties that you may experience. We will be answering questions following the presentation and as time permits. The handouts pod contains relevant documents for you to download, such as our resource list for this webinar. And then after this live event, please send any questions to us via our help desk at info@remstacenter.org. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available in archived form on our site within 7 business days after the live event. I am so happy to introduce our guest speakers for today. Juan Morales leads the School Facilities and Transportation Services Division at the California Department of Education. The division is responsible for ensuring that school districts in California design plans and select school sites that are safe and educationally appropriate pursuant to regulatory standards. The School Facilities and Transportation Services Division also helps develop curriculum and provides training for the safe and efficient transportation of students. Juan has been actively involved in all major disasters affecting schools in California since 2016. He has been activated in the State Operations Center multiple times and has co-led the school's task force. Juan created the California Department of Education's first emergency services team dedicated to supporting schools during emergencies. In addition to his role at the California Department of Education, Juan has been on the National Council of School Facilities Board of Directors since 2016 and currently serves as the 2021 past president. Michael Elliott has been in the charge of the Oregon Department of Education's Office of School Facilities since its creation in 2015. The Office of School Facilities is responsible for providing grants to local school districts to assess and improve their facilities. Additionally, the Office of School Facilities assists districts with creating high-quality emergency operations plans to address all hazards that districts face in their region. Michael currently serves as the president of the National Council of School Facilities, and the National Council of School Facilities is an organization focused on supporting state school facilities directors in their role of supporting local school districts in providing healthy, safe, sustainable, and educationally adequate public school facilities. Michael is a lifelong Oregonian and lives in Salem with his wife, Heidi, and their 9-year-old daughter, Emily. We're so pleased to have both Juan and Michael join us today and share their insight on this topic. Here is the agenda for today's webinar. First, we'll provide an overview of the importance of collaborative planning and school emergency operations plan development. And then our guest presenters will explore the role of school facility managers in school safety. The REMS-T Center will then discuss how facility managers can enhance the 6-step planning process, which will be followed by a question and answer session. And we will end with key resources to support your work. We will also be hosting a 30-minute web chat on our community of practice immediately following this event to answer any remaining or additional questions. So log in or register for the community of practice now and get ready to chat online using the web links pod. So let's get started with a poll question. Have you heard of the REMS-T Center before today's session? And if so, in which context? Provide your answer to the poll that you see on your screen. Perhaps you've attended a live training. Have you attended a virtual training? Have you requested technical assistance from us or downloaded a resource? Perhaps you've met us at a national conference, or is there some other way that you've met the REMS-T Center and interacted with us before? I see a large number of people have downloaded our resources and attended our virtual trainings. We do have a variety of other virtual training opportunities besides our webinars, which we are doing today. It's great to get a sense of who's on here and how we've interacted before, so thank you for responding to this poll question. If this is your first time meeting us, welcome. The U.S. Department of Education Office of Safe and Supportive Schools administers the REMS TA Center to help build the preparedness capacity, including prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery efforts of schools, school districts, and institutions of higher education with their community partners at the local, state, and federal levels. REMS TA Center staff members are available via email or phone to respond to your request for technical assistance on emergency operations plan development. Families and communities expect schools and school districts to keep children and youth safe from threats, including crime and violence, as well as hazards like natural disasters, disease outbreaks, and hazardous material spills. In collaboration with their community partners, schools and school districts can plan for these potential threats and hazards through the creation of an emergency operations plan or an EOP. The school EOP describes how people, not just students, but also educators, administrators, staff, and visitors, as well as property, will be protected. It also details who is responsible for carrying out specific actions before, during, and after an emergency. It identifies the personnel, equipment, facilities, supplies, and other resources available, and it outlines how all actions will be coordinated. While school EOPs vary in their contents, as they are customized according to the school building, they generally contain three main sections. The basic plan section provides an overview of the school's approach to emergency operations, such as training, exercises, and information collection. The functional annexes section presents how the school will manage common essential functions like evacuation, communications, accounting for all people, etc., before, during, and after an emergency. And then the threat and hazard specific annexes section identifies protocols schools will follow to address the specific emergencies, such as hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes, food contamination, or power outages. School EOPs should be developed by school-level emergency planning and response teams with membership from the district's core planning team. The formation of this multidisciplinary planning team is step one of the six-step planning process that is outlined within the guide for developing high-quality school emergency operations plans, known as the school guide, and the role of districts in developing high-quality school emergency operations plans, known as the district guide. These guides may be used by core planning teams to create new plans, as well as to revise and update existing plans and align their emergency planning practices with those at the national, state, and local levels. You may access the at-a-glance versions of these guides from the WebLinks pod or even download the PDFs from the REMS TA Center website. So why collaborate? Well, because planning and the development of a school EOP require the expertise of a diverse group of people so that it reflects the diverse needs of the school community. Everyone has expertise to contribute: administrators, school nurses, families and parents, educators, information technology specialists, school psychologists, transportation directors, community engagement specialists, mental health professionals, and of course, school facility managers, which is why we are here today. Facilities personnel have a wealth of knowledge about the building structure and campus layout, security systems, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, and much more. But how does that knowledge relate to and impact a school EOP? Well, it may be used to develop annexes for functions, hazards, and threats that you see on your screen, as well as participate in activities that are a part of or impact emergency management planning. So as you can see, facility managers have critical insight on a variety of areas within safety, security, emergency management, and preparedness, and therefore should serve as members of core planning teams. Now we'd like to check back in with our audience to get some feedback via a poll. What role do you play in school safety, security, emergency management, and preparedness? Are you a part of emergency operations plan development? Are you a part of incident response, maybe site assessments, sometimes called safety audits? Are you a part of facility improvement, recovery, or some other activity within safety? See that there's a lot of roles that are being represented right now. 68% are a part of emergency operations plan development. 60% are a part of facility improvement. More than half are a part of site assessments. Close to half are a part of incident response. Thank you. We appreciate you participating in this role to really give us a sense of who's joining us from the field. If you have any questions today, please do not hesitate to pose your questions to us through the Q&A pod throughout the event. In 2020, the U.S. Government Accountability Office released a report that examines the common facility condition issues in public schools according to school districts and their highest priorities for renovations and updates. According to this study, an estimated 54%, or about half, of school districts need to replace multiple building systems or features in their schools, including those systems listed on this slide. Based on survey results, GAO estimates that security is the highest priority for school districts when updating or renovating school facilities at 92%. Monitoring hazards to student and staff health was also a high priority at 78%. And you may access this GAO report in the web links pod. With that foundation of the importance of collaborative planning and the conditions of and priorities for public school facilities, our guest presenters will now delve into the role of school facility managers and school safety. And I'm so happy to turn things over to Michael now, followed by Juan. Michael?
Well, good morning, or good day. This is Michael Elliott. I want to make sure, can everyone hear me? Okay. So I want to talk about, as stated, I'm Michael Elliott, Office of School Facilities, and I would like to talk about a couple of different things. One is the state challenges that are involving facilities emergency planning and really the role that states can play and how they can help local education agencies to involve their school facilities managers. So I wear a couple of hats. One is I'm with the Oregon Department of Education, and I'm also with the National Council of School Facilities. And the National Council of School Facilities is there. It's made up of 25 states across the nation that help state directors at school facilities. How can they support their local education agencies? How can they make sure the local education agencies have educationally adequate, healthy, safe, and sustainable schools? We do that by collaborating with each other. We do that by engaging with the U.S. Department of Education and really try to provide that support for states. And so for my presentation, that's really what I'm going to be focusing on, is looking at it at a very high level of the environment in which states operate and how various states, some best practices that states will use to ensure that school facilities managers are included before, during, and after an emergency. So one of the biggest things that states operate in is local control. We've all know what local control is, but to remind, it's where a lot of decisions about education are made at the local governing districts, so the local school board or other local government that runs education. So they can make curriculum decisions, they can make school day decisions, they can make which facilities to operate, which facilities to close, when to buy new facilities. So a lot of those decisions happen at the local level, and states give that control to the local level. Well, what that means for states when they're trying to get facilities managers involved in the emergency operations planning process is that it moves us more towards influencing and persuading rather than direct, absolutely must do this. Now, if there's a state law that's passed and the state education agency has said you will enforce this law, then yes, a state can have that direct influence. But absent that, states are left with being more informative and persuasive and providing technical assistance. Additionally, if there's funding, states can provide that funding and then again have a better chance of discussing with local education agencies about what, how they can involve facilities managers. But even without funding, there's a lot of things states can do to help local education agencies understand that facilities managers play a key and vital role in this. Another thing that states deal with is LEAs have varying levels of expertise. Every state has small districts. Every state has large districts. I will acknowledge Hawaii has one school district, so they don't have multiple school districts. But for most of the rest of the states, even if you have big districts like in New York or California, you still also have very small districts. And that may mean that if the district is not thinking about emergency management, there may not be a lot of expertise there, there may not be staff available, and some of the districts that are more remote really can have limited availability for technical expertise. And so that's another challenge and environment that states operate in. So one of the ways states can help school districts include facilities managers in emergency management is training. And there's a couple of different things to think about. Obviously, training matters, but there's two ways that states can do this that maybe is more effective. One is that when you have the training, when you provide the training to local education agencies, give them homework and, let local agents, let LEAs like, okay, you brought your superintendent, you brought your principal, great. Here's your template for your EOP. And they'll go back to their district, they'll start working on it and quickly realize, oh, I don't know the answers to these questions. I don't know where the fire alarms are located. I don't know where where we're going for our relocation. I don't know where the HVAC shutoffs are. So I need to start involving people, and in the training later they say, yes, you need to involve school facilities managers. You need to make sure you have that collaborative cross-disciplinary team, and letting LEAs learn that on their own is really, helps them understand and internalize the importance of facility managers in EOP planning. Another thing, and this is something that Oregon does, is create regional areas of technical expertise. So we are using some funds, federal funds, to create a grant program where we've hired at our ESDs, which are regional education agencies, we've hired individuals there to be the technical assistants for that region of the state. So they're there, they can go to school districts, they understand that region of the state. Oregon is a geographically diverse state. The eastern side, is more concerned about wildfires, high winds. The western side more concerned about earthquakes and tsunamis. So the regional technical expertise is there to help those districts, plan for their individual emergencies, and also to, again, reinforce that, engage in planning, make sure all of your right people are at the table. And again, the regional expertise can help with building those cross-disciplinary teams. The other thing that states can do is, if they have the technical expertise, go out to the local school district and say, okay, let's do a threat assessment, let's do a walkthrough. And when you do that walkthrough and the facility manager isn't present, then start asking questions. Well, what's behind this door? And if the principal doesn't know or doesn't have the keys, then maybe the facility manager needs to be there. Or if, and it can help facilities managers and show how crucial they are to making sure that emergencies are minimized as much as possible. If the facilities manager is saying, look, I need money for these improvements and not getting it, a threat assessment walkthrough going in can say, well, these improvements lead to safety, and then, budgets can be changed or money can be found to help make those, small safety improvements right away. So again, it's providing that hands-on opportunity for the LEA to really learn and understand, oh, I need to have everybody at the table, because without that, my EOP is not going to be very good. And I know I've been focusing a lot on the EOP because, this process starts with planning. Once you plan, you start training, and then when the emergency happens, you should be reacting as you train. So if the facilities manager has been involved in the planning and they're included in any training exercises done, whether they're live exercises, trauma-informed exercises, tabletop exercises, then when an emergency happens, the facilities manager is right there. And it's very important to include the facilities manager, because chances are they're the ones, as many of you know, You're the ones that are going to get the fire alarm wake-up call at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're the ones that might get the burglar alarm. It's not necessarily going to be the superintendent. So if you include facilities managers, with the planning, then you lead to the training, then when the emergency happens, facility managers will be right there moving forward and engaging and making sure that, during the emergency, it's handled as quickly as possible, and after the emergency, the facility is brought back into operating condition, whether that's to serve as an emergency shelter or to serve as a school moving forward. Another thing that I found a lot of states do, some of the states that have these organizations, is the states connect directly with their facilities management associations. For example, Oregon has the Oregon School Facility Management Association, and the Oregon Department of Education engages directly with them. So we provide that technical assistance directly to facilities managers. We give them information, and we help them, again, it's that whole encompassing thing that our state provides. We have the regional technical assistance that works with superintendents and facility managers, say facility manager needs to be there. We then have the state working with the facilities managers say, here's some information you can take back to make your EOPs better. So I've heard other states, I know other states do that, whether it's a plant manager association or a facilities manager association, but that direct connection with your facilities individuals that are working in the buildings and understand the buildings also is a way states can really help encourage them to be part of the EOP planning process. So again, this is a really high level of how states can engage and ensure that LEAs are supporting or including their facilities managers. So with that, I really want to make sure that I hit home with this. It's the technical assistance, information, and support. And I think the key is let the LEA kind of learn the lesson, because if the lesson's learned in a hands-on way, it's internalized better, and it makes sure that the LEA will continue to include facilities managers moving forward. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? This is Juan Morales, and again, I'm with the California Department of Education. With me here today is also Mr. Joe Anderson and Jake Wolf, and they're part of CDE's emergency management team, and they're also going to be available here to answer questions at the end. We're going to share some information on how we are involved in emergencies here in California. I think most of you have seen the videos, the pictures of all the major wildfires that we've had in California in recent years, and we've had a lot. But starting in 2017 is when things started to get really bad. We started having more fires, larger fires. Ultimately, we had our most destructive fire ever, which was the Camp Fire in 2018 that destroyed just over 18,000 structures. And unfortunately, 85 people lost their lives. We also had our largest fire, the August Complex Fire in 2020, that burned just a little over 1 million acres. And again, all of this has happened in just the last 5 years. Now, unfortunately, the schools have not been spared from the destruction. Since 2017, we've had a total of 37 school facilities that have been damaged or destroyed by wildfires. And obviously, destroyed is self-explanatory. Damage, we just label that whenever there's one building that's damaged, but not the entire campus. They have been spread out in 8 different counties and in 9 different fires. And throughout this time, schools in California have also been impacted by other disasters, like, of course, the pandemic, public safety power shutoffs, mudslides, and earthquakes, just to name a few. So how is the California Department of Education involved in disasters? Well, first of all, we have a very, very strong partnership with our colleagues from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, otherwise known as Cal-OES. Whenever there's a major emergency and schools may be impacted, we are activated at the State Operations Center, and this is basically ground zero for all of the statewide coordination between state agencies and our federal partners. Some state agencies also have their own department operations center that they stand up to help provide support to the representatives of the SOC. We are actually, with the help of Joe and Jake, in the process of structuring our own internal DOC to help, again, support our efforts at the State Operations Center. There's also a local government support function, but I'll talk more about that at the local level involvement a little later. So this is how we organize and coordinate the state level, but at the local level, all K-12 public schools are required to develop and maintain what we call here in California a comprehensive school safety plan. Now, just like the name says, it is pretty comprehensive and it covers a lot of different areas. I do want to mention that we have a different team here at CDE that focuses on helping schools with the comprehensive school safety plan, but we wanted to share some of this information. The plan is developed and written by a school site council, or the SSC can delegate this responsibility to a safety planning committee that's made up of a principal or their designee, a teacher, a parent, classified employee, and others if desired. And the school site council should consist of a representative from law enforcement agency, fire department, and other first responder entities in writing and developing the comprehensive school safety plan. The plan and any updates should be shared with law enforcement and fire department, and of course other first responder entities. And this is key, and this is aligned with what Allison mentioned earlier, with what Michael mentioned in terms of having a multidisciplinary planning team to help with the development and the updates of the plan. Here in California, these plans have to be updated each year before March 1st. And just to share some of the components, because again, it is quite comprehensive, the plan includes things like status of school crimes, child abuse and neglect procedures, disaster procedures, and emergency plans by using the standardized emergency management system. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Earthquake procedures, how frequent to have drop procedures. Of course, this may not be necessary in many other states, but here in California, it's a must for us, given the frequency of earthquakes that we have. And of course, the plan also has specific information regarding fire drills and fire alarm system requirements. There is also a requirement to have a school building disaster plan that covers situations like bomb threats, earthquakes, floods, power failures, weapons hostages. The plans also should include procedures to allow public agencies, such as American Red Cross, to use the buildings and grounds for things like mass care and welfare shelters during emergencies. It should include notification to teachers of dangerous students, safe ingress and egress of students, parents, and school employees to and from school, and procedures for conducting tactical responses to criminal incidents, including individuals with guns. Again, it's very comprehensive, and to help our school districts organize all of the elements of the plan, CDE created what we call a compliance tool for the Comprehensive School Safety Plan. It's basically a checklist of all the different components required in law. There's a section to include the date of when that particular mandate was met and the name of the plan. There's also a comment section in case it's needed. We have this link here. We'll send this to everyone so that you can have an idea what this looks like. The use of this tool is not required. However, compliance with the components within the checklist is required. So this is just to help districts kind of, get these things organized, have it in one location. Okay, what section of the law requires it? When do we meet it? And if we have any comments so that we know, because again, these plans have to be updated March of each year. So now back to the Standardized Emergency Management System, or SEMS as we call it. And this is our guide in California that shows how we organize for emergency response. It starts, of course, with the Incident Command Center at the field, And then we work with the local governments, the operational areas, which is usually at the county level. And then we have our Cal OES regions, which breaks down the state into inland, coastal, and southern regions. And then we get to the state where, again, Cal OES leads all of the emergency management efforts while working with other state partners like ourselves and our federal partners as well. Now, if we look at SEMS from the perspective of schools, it's very similar, as you would imagine, from the local level to the state. Starting, of course, with the local educational agencies, which includes all school districts, charter schools, and private schools. We've helped private schools here in California in the past as well. Next, we work, the school districts work really closely with their county offices of education who helped support their efforts. And then it's us. We work primarily with the COEs in helping to support during response, but we also work with school districts directly. We work with them to gather information on unmet needs, and then we communicate that with our colleagues at the SOC. We also work very closely with our federal partners at the Department of Education on disaster grants, and with FEMA as well when assisting school districts. One thing that I wanted to mention here is that establishing those relationships is key. Knowing who to talk to, right? From the school district perspective, who is going to be involved, during emergencies, and who to call at the county office of education, at the local county government. Who are those contacts? Establishing those relationships before you are experiencing a disaster. That is key. And then another thing that I wanted to mention is that some of you may be impacted personally. And when you have to worry about evacuating, moving your family, and also taking care of your schools, decision making is hard. It can be very stressful. We've heard time and time again from our folks that having a deep bench in the sense of who's going to be responsible to help is really helpful because some people may not be available, both physically and mentally. It takes a toll. And then the other thing that I really wanted to stress is that problem solving is key too. You're going to encounter new problems that are probably going to require creative solutions and things that may not be written in any plan. And here's where you have to be nimble and creative to find solutions, because as much as and planning is extremely helpful, but not everything is in a plan. And most of us, I think, in these fields are problem solvers naturally, so this is really helpful. But again, decision making is hard, particularly when you have personal impacts. So for us, this structure has worked really well. We've been very fortunate that we created our own emergency services team because it is very, very efficient and helpful to have dedicated people to help support LEAs during these emergencies. In the past, we all have pitched in. There's a lot of people here in the department, not just me, that help schools, but we also have our day jobs. So having a dedicated team has been really helpful in helping us do a lot of things, tracking information on GIS. We've been helping districts directly with the wildfires, supporting the pandemic efforts from the beginning. We have been able to distribute over, this says 50, sorry, that's a typo. It's actually 90 million pieces of PPE. But one of the things that is very powerful, and I can't stress this enough, is just being there for districts. Even if it's just to let them know who to talk to. They may not know what to do, particularly our small rural districts. They may not know where to go. But having somebody talk to them, call them, check in on them has been very, very impactful. And that's one of the things that we've heard. And having that direct line of communication and helping to coordinate efforts on who they need to talk to, others that have experienced these similar emergencies, that is really helpful. That's another thing that I wanted to point out, is that, talking to others that have gone through similar situations is very helpful. but just having somebody that they can rely on, that they can talk to on a regular basis to help track, any unmet needs is very helpful. And we're continuing to evolve and improve in our services. One of the things that we had a very hard time on early on is gathering information quickly and accurately from our LEAs during an emergency. We've had multiple fires going on at once, and trying to get information has been somewhat of a challenge. So what we did is we started looking at developing technology tools that will help us connect directly with impacted districts instantly. And again, this is going to help us gather timely and accurate information that we need to then share that information with our colleagues at the State Operations Center. So we developed what we call the School Emergency Reporting System that will allow us to do that. It will allow us to communicate with LEAs and identify any unmet needs. If we know of an incident, we can reach out to them directly through SIRS and get information, or if they are aware of an incident that we're not aware of, they can communicate directly to us and give us a status of the situation, but also, and most importantly is, are there any unmet needs that they need our support? So that wraps up our presentation. Again, our emergency services team is a team of 2, but we've covered a lot of ground. We have Joe Anderson and Jake Wolf. We have their contact information here. We also have a general email inbox at emergencyservices@cde.ca.gov. If anybody has any other questions, please, obviously at the end of the webinar, but even beyond the webinar, feel free to reach out to us and we will do what we can to help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan and Michael, for sharing all of those strategies, ideas, and experiences that you have from collaborating with and supporting local education agencies. As Juan mentioned, if you have any questions for either of our presenters, please send them into the Q&A pod on your screen. We will answer those a little bit later on in the webinar. But right now, I'd like to spend a little bit of time walking through how school facility managers can enhance the 6-step planning process. As we mentioned earlier, the most comprehensive and effective school EOP is developed by a multidisciplinary planning team, which adds value to the breadth, depth, and scope of the plan. Ensure a school facility manager is a member of your core planning team. Their perspective from the facilities side will help take into account the condition of the school buildings and grounds and any other facility-related data that could impact the school community and make it more at risk or vulnerable to threats and hazards. The facility manager is not only a steward from the facility staff, but also carries the safety and training message from the core planning team back to school custodians and others in the school facilities and maintenance group. In step 2, the planning team identifies hazards and threats unique to the school community and then prioritizes them. Assessments are important sources of information here, such as site assessments and capacity assessments. So invite your school facility manager to lead or be a member on the site assessment team, which will provide information on the potential impact of threats and hazards to the school buildings and grounds and which facilities are physically accessible. The REMC Center does have a free mobile application for conducting site assessments called SiteAssess. Make sure you involve school facility managers in capacity assessments, both their creation and their analysis. These capture resources available and staff capabilities such as skills and training on construction and hand tools, structural engineering, waste disposal, shelter management, fire suppression, and other mechanical abilities. In step 3, the team decides which threats and hazards will be addressed in the EOP and then develop goals and objectives for each. And during this work, the team will identify cross-cutting functions and develop goals and objectives for them as well. Ensure that your school facility manager participates in the development of goals and objectives for the function shelter in place. Possible goals, which are broad, general statements that indicate a desired outcome for the function shelter in place could be as follows. Before an emergency, have the capacity to shelter in place immediately. During an emergency, protect students and staff from exposure to exterior hazards or contaminants. After emergency, restore a safe and healthy learning environment. School facility managers may also provide insight on security, recovery, and lockdown, among other functions. In step 4, the planning team builds upon the goals and objectives created in the previous step and assigns courses of action that address the who, what, when, where, and how for achieving them. Together, they form annexes or portions of the plan. Invite the school and facility manager to participate in scenario-based planning to imagine the different ways an emergency may unfold. They may interject with the roles and responsibilities of their staff, such as locking gates and exterior doors, turning off all HVAC systems, and assisting teachers with turning off classroom ventilation units, and restocking supplies and sealing rooms. In step 5, the team develops a basic plan of the school EOP, formats the annexes, and reviews all sections. After the plan is approved by leadership, the team should securely share portions with community partners. So ensure that the latest versions of building maps and floor plans of the school are integrated into the draft EOP. This information is particularly important to fire, emergency medical services, and law enforcement officials so that they can rapidly move through a school during an emergency, ensure that areas are safe, and also tend to people in need. And then finally, the planning team needs to implement the plan. This includes providing the whole school community with training and opportunities for practice. So invite school facility managers to attend and even lead trainings. They can participate and observe exercises as well. As members of the core planning team, school facility managers will be able to contribute to the revisions to and maintenance of the EOP after an event, whether that's from a real exercise, a real emergency, or an exercise. And this is how planning teams can close the loop and ensure that the plan evolves to meet the needs of the school community. And with that, it's now time for a question and answer session. We will be answering questions that you have submitted to us, but we encourage you to continue to send us your questions as they occur to you during this session by using the Q&A pod on your screen. Questions will be answered in the order in which they appear and as time permits. And we will get to any unanswered questions in the web chat following this event. And looking at the questions that have come in so far, my first question that I see is for our guest presenters, Juan and Michael. What are the most important things that facility managers can share with teachers and staff? Juan or Michael, would either of you like to answer that question?
Sure. Well, I think from our perspective, when the comprehensive school safety plan is something that we want to make sure that there's awareness from teachers and staff, just what it is, the components, and they should be trained on it. I think that's very key for folks that are on the ground at the school site in terms of teachers and staff. But knowing that there is a plan and they should be aware. Sometimes they may not, depending on the size of the schools. But sharing that information, I think is going to be, very important so that, teachers and staff know what the school has developed to help them during these situations.
Thank you, Juan. Yes, and also similar to that, ensure there's redundancy in knowledge of building controls. For example, does somebody else other than the facilities manager know how to operate the HVAC controls, boiler shutoff, alarm panel location, that sort of thing? I think a lot of districts make the assumption that the facilities manager will be unfazed by an emergency and not have any personal emergencies happening at the same time. And so if for some reason the facilities manager is unavailable, who else can step up and help, manage the emergency as backup?
Those are great points. Absolutely. Another question that has come in from our attendees is also for Michael and Juan. How many facility managers are also the school's safety officer? We're a tiny single school, so I'm a one-person facilities department as well as the default safety and emergency preparedness director.
I unfortunately don't have specific numbers, and honestly, I don't even have those specific numbers for Oregon, and I think it really depends on the school size and school district size. But as we know across the country, there's a lot of, almost every state has very small school districts. So I think a good percentage of district personnel at smaller districts, like 100, 200 students, maybe even as many as 500 students, are wearing multiple hats. So chances are it could be a lot of the facilities managers are also their school safety officer.
Absolutely, I agree, Mike. Oh, go ahead, Juan.
Yeah, just just a little perspective here. Like here in California, we have over 1,000 districts. A little over a half of them are considered to be small districts. Now, small for us here is usually defined as having 2,500 students or less. So, again, the smaller districts don't have different facilities departments. It's a smaller staff doing all of it. So I think that there's a lot of small districts that, do it all.
Those are great points. Completely agree. The six-step planning process is something that's scalable. It can be used by small schools. It can be used by large schools. And we recognize that there is a lot of variation across the country and that, those different roles on the core planning team that we've talked about may be filled by the same people. And that's totally fine. It's just important that people who have all these different areas of expertise are a part of the core planning team, whether that's many people or, a smaller group of people that still represent all those roles. There's a lot of flexibility in the six-step planning process and the guidance that we talk about. Another question that's come in from attendees is, what documents should facilities managers have on hand to share? For example, communicating with police, fire, and other community partners. Juan and Michael, do you have any recommendations or examples of documents or files that would be helpful in sharing information about facilities with first responders?
So I'll go first, and that's the order we presented in. Again, I think it really depends on what are the most prevalent emergencies that a local school could face and make sure those documents are available. But generally, I think facility or campus maps would be good, including room numbers and identification of what is in building spaces. So these aren't, your as-built architectural drawings, but if you need the room 101, so when they say there's an emergency in room 101 and emergency personnel are coming in, you can say, here's room 101, and they get an idea of what the room number is. And again, also, where's the location of shutoff, valves and alarms and that sort of thing? Where's the location of the Knox box? That sort of thing. So how can you make it easier for first responders to respond to the emergency and, minimize or eliminate the emergency as quickly as possible, saving lives?
And I completely agree with Michael. The only thing that I would add is that many times, our school districts don't have electronic copies of their plans, especially depending on how old they are. And when you have an active incident on campus and you have the campus closed off, you don't have the luxury of going in there and pulling out the plans. If there's a way to have them electronically and being shared in advance, early with, local first responders, I think it would be very helpful because, again, you may not have access to the buildings where the plans are at if you have them in hard copy.
Thank you. There is a question that just came in that I'd like to give Juan and Michael the opportunity to comment on as well. And then I will also add things at the end. So a question from an attendee says that they are the facility manager at their little private school, and they are the planning team. They're also de facto the safety officer, Department of One. So it's a struggle to get other people to participate, non-facility managers, to take safety issues seriously and then prioritize them alongside curriculum, et cetera. Are there any strategies or that you all can offer this attendee?
I sympathize with you, and I know that's very frustrating. I think maybe, the opposite is true. Rather than have the superintendent, as I described, having the superintendent go and, try to fill it out themselves and realize they need the facility manager, invite them on a walkthrough if you can do a walkthrough or threat assessment. Make sure that, superintendent or principal, but your school's leadership of, can you run a tabletop exercise with them, even just a very short one that's not a fire drill, but it's just, okay, can I have 15 minutes of your time and let's just run through this what if scenario, and get them to realize how important it is when they start saying, well, can't we do this, can't we do that, can't we do this? You're like, well, that's where I need your help to build these comprehensive EOPs. Try to get them engaged, in the process, so they can see like, oh, this matters. And it may not even be, the tabletop. It may change as your EOP changes and grows, but it gets them engaged in the process like, no, this matters. And that way we don't have an emergency where it becomes worse because we weren't planning for it.
Those are some awesome strategies, Michael, and I hear Juan, you may want to add something.
No, I think this is a constant struggle, and obviously you have to have buy-in from leadership, and even if you do assign roles, mention the importance of the effort and what is to be gained or what could be lost if people are not involved, because it's going to take the team. It's going to take more than one person to be able to successfully respond. And the consequences could be dire if they're not a solid team. Here, in California, when we're involved in emergencies, particularly Cal OES, we always mention, one team, one fight. And that's usually what helps us come together and be able to support each other, because it's going to take a lot more than just one person.
Absolutely. We recognize that buy-in and obtaining leadership buy-in is fundamental in emergency management planning. It is a principle that's listed in the school guide, and we recognize that it can be a challenge engaging your colleagues in this work, but that is also why we created a resource that will be in the resource. It's found in the resource list, and I would talk about it anyways, but we've recently updated our building blocks toolkit to school safety, which is a large document that's meant to provide fundamental information on emergency management planning, safety, security, preparedness, why it's important, and then resources that are available to help schools with this work. So I recommend checking that out as well. Another question that came in is wondering about if the resources mentioned throughout this presentation will be made afterwards. So this webinar is being recorded, and it will be archived on the REMS TA Center website following an archival process. So it'll be on our website in about 7 business days, as we mentioned. That includes the resource list that's in the handouts pod, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint slides. Another question that came in is, are there any continuity of operations templates? And the REMS TA Center does have a number of resources on continuity of operations planning. You may find that on our website in our topic-specific resources section. There's an entire web page that is dedicated to the topic of continuity of operations planning. We also have some continuity of operations planning resources from state and local partners in the REMS TA Center toolbox that may be of use. And the EOP Assist software application helps create any annex, including the continuity of operations plan annex. That's another resource that's available to you. Thank you so much for your questions. We will get to the rest of them in our web chat following this webinar, but we'd like to move forward and continue and close out. And first we'll start with sharing some resources that we have for you to support your work. Again, a huge thank you to Juan and Michael. You've really brought a wealth of information and discussion points to this important topic, and we thank you for your participation. There are a few resources that the REMS TA Center would like to showcase that may be used by school facility managers, by court planning teams, school safety leaders, even community partners, anyone with a role or interest or responsibility in school emergency management planning. The REMS TA Center's free SiteAssess mobile application is for conducting site assessments, and it's available to download. We've created trainings as well to assist you with not only site assessments, but using SiteAssess, including a new online course, as well as a downloadable module in the specialized training package. And then we have synchronous trainings by request in the virtual and in-person format. Those are all listed in the resource list, and then we also have some flyers on those resources in the handouts pod. We've also recently updated the Building Blocks to School Safety Toolkit, like I mentioned earlier, which is meant to distribute to team members to get them engaged in emergency management planning. And then our website also contains a crime prevention through environmental design module, sample annexes, and then that topic-specific resources section, which just has so many resources. Our partners also have relevant resources as well. The newest is a hurricane and flood mitigation handbook for public facilities with FEMA. From FEMA, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency offers the 3 T's toolkit for reducing lead in drinking water in schools, as well as resources on healthy school environments and indoor air quality in schools. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has a CEPTED schools assessment, and then the National Council on School Facilities in itself serves as a resource. Again, all of these resources that we're mentioning now are in our resource list in the handouts pod. And then also I wanted to note that May is Building Safety Month, a global activity that aims to raise awareness about building safety, and this year during week 3 they are focusing on disaster preparedness. Of course, the REMS TA Center is also a resource. We're just an email or a phone call away, so please reach out if you have any technical assistance requests on any aspect of emergency management planning. Again, thank you for attending today's webinar, for submitting your questions and engaging us throughout the event. The REMS TA Center appreciates your participation and hopes to see you again at another webinar in this series, or just to hear from you in the future. We'll now be heading over to our community of practice to continue answering questions via web chat. Thank you and take care.